right, today we are going to do a little review for two assessments that you have. You have your DBA, it's a live discussion-based assessment where you and I will have a conversation and talk about specifically the Roman art that we've discussed, and it'll be on your Roman art guide. The DBA is just over the Roman art. Once you complete your DBA, I'm going to give you a code so you can go in and take your comprehensive summary. This is your big summative assessment. It's a multiple choice assessment, so probably won't take very long. But we're going to go over everything that you want to make sure that you understand so you'll be successful on it. But again, you got to come to the DBA first, and then you'll get the code to get your assessment. And we'll talk about the DBA after we look at the review. All right, so quickly I'm just going to go through the different modules and take a look at the overarching things you want to be most aware of. And so we've covered a lot. This has been a huge undertaking. This class, there's so many things to cover, and so you need to know absolutely everything from prehistoric through Roman, and so that's a lot to take in. So we're going to kind of look at what's the most important things from some of these, and you want to always excuse me, remember caves of Lascaux. These prehistoric cave paintings are always going to be something that you want to be able to recall. It's the origins of art. It's the very first beginnings. The Venus of Willendorf. You want to know about these things. Some of the stuff that you may not kind of feel like you need to have as firm an understanding of. Might be from the prehistoric period. That is, might be some of this. Architecture related stuff, the the city. It's important to understand it was the early dwellings, but and the earliest form of civilization, that sort of thing. But knowing how their streets are laid out and their architecture is probably not going to be as important as just recognizing time period when it happened. The murals, anytime you see the major art from those periods, you want to know just to kind of recognize where this piece fits in the timeline. So instead of trying to remember specific facts and dates, that sort of thing, think of it more globally, and how can you apply the style of art by just and recognizing, I should say, sort of where a piece of art fits in the whole realm of humanity, where in the history of humanity, you just want to be able to identify where these different pieces come out. So when we look at that prehistoric, you really want to focus on the caves of Lascaux, the murals, the Venus of Willendorf, the Katahayuk, the again, not necessarily all the architecture stuff, but when did it happen? When did it occur? Where? You know, who, what, when, and where of those type of things. So not a huge chunk out of that prehistoric. The Mesopotamian. There's a few things here you want to kind of. Anytime we're looking at the written language, you want to know the formations of these early writings and where's the origins of language and writing. And so Sumerians were big on that. You'll want to know about Sumerian writing and so forth. How did they do it? That sort of thing. Again, I'm less concerned with knowing names and dates more so than being able to recognize that because of these specific features, the big eyes and so forth, recognizing that it's Sumerian, recognizing sort of, again, time period. I want you to understand that and recognize the progression of art and how we go from these very simple art forms from that little Venus of Willendorf and their progression through time as it literally matures. And so we want to kind of be able to recognize where in that growth a piece of art sort of falls. Babylon, I'm going to be honest, I don't know that there's a ton about Babylon in your assessment, but you want to recognize the Mesopotamian relationship to religion, faith, God, and temples and so forth. The Assyrians, ziggurats are an important part of the architectural. Maybe I said not to pay a whole lot of attention to Ketahaya, but you'll see sort of that progression as the materials become more permanent and the construction methods become more permanent. It was the Assyrians and Mesopotamia where we start to see some of these advancements that really start that architectural stuff that you want to pay most attention to. And as we go forward, architecture plays a big role. Persians, you do want to understand Persian Empire and sort of how it plays a role in that progression of art. Where when we look at the Greeks, Persians, Romans, these relationships are kind of like dominoes. We kind of want to understand how one topples into the next. Let's look at this next one here. And as far as Egyptian art, you're going to want to pay some attention to, because the Egyptians are where, again, you want to focus on writing. The Egyptians have writings of their own, much like the Sumerians. What's the difference? What are they called? Know a little bit about that. Understand the linear and very often nature of the Egyptian art and how it was kind of used to tell stories and that sort of thing. You want to be able to recognize, again, what makes Egyptian art look Egyptian art. What stylistically are the cues that are going to let you recognize that this work of art is not prehistoric, it's not Roman, it's not ancient Greek, or how do we know that this is Egyptian art? You want to pay attention to those stylistic cues as you go through. The other thing about Egypt is architecture, from Imhotep and so forth to these Great Pyramids. You want to be able to recognize and identify during what point in that Egyptian progression were these built. That's going to be really important. Who was responsible for their coming? Not necessarily they didn't go out and build it by hand, but for them coming about. When we look at how Egyptian architecture progresses, again, think about in that timeline. Again, we talk about the dominoes falling. Recognize how we go architecturally from the ziggurats, those Ketahaya, to these temples and so forth that we see being built in Egypt. Start thinking again architecturally about what are the new architectural advances that are being made in each of these different. Egyptians did something bigger, better than the Mesopotamians. They did something better than they did at Ketahaya, and the Greeks are going to build on that. The Romans are going to build on that. Recognize what each of those little steps and advancements are. Those are definitely going to be on your multiple choice questions, on your multiple choice assessment. What we want to know most about the next is ancient Greek. So for me, honestly, Greek and Roman is where the meat really starts get going in the realm of art. You need to recognize, particularly like a little smile, a little archaic, geometric periods, what makes them, again, identifiable. How do we know that, for instance, that we're looking at a geometric piece of art versus an archaic piece of art? We look at archaic, we're going to look at that, archaic. That smile, if you remember, they had that horrible smile that we can't forget. Yep. And so recognizing, particularly as we go through archaic, early, mid, late Greek to early Roman, how the human figure, again, if we start looking at the Egyptians, they're very stylistic, very stylized. They had these big V-cut, wide shoulders. Hierarchy was based on how large they were, and now we start to see through the progression from Egypt all the way into Rome, this progression towards naturalism. And so the figures become more humanistic, more like humans really look like. And the poses slowly become more humanistic. Archaic ain't there yet. We got that weird little smile. They've got the very stiff poses and so forth. So just recognizing how these advancements relate themselves, whether it's recognizing that this art is more advanced than the previous art because these figures are doing something, just playing a game. They're not in the midst of war and that sort of thing. So think about what is being depicted as well as how it's being depicted. Again, architecturally, Greek temples, you're going to want to know things, the platforms, the columns, superstructures, cornices. You're going to want to know specifically, and don't become an adult without knowing the three orders of columns: Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian. And so I always remember Ionic, Doric, Corinthian. Did I get that right? I always remember. But we want to remember that those orders kind of identify those structures and, they're in levels of importance, if you will. Recognize what are the different parts of those Greek buildings, Greek structures, what was the purpose of each of those, and then also kind of understanding how the Greeks really sort of start this architectural tradition, but it's the Romans that kind of take and build on that and really further it. Not a lot from the Hellenistic period, other than recognizing, again, this progression towards this very naturalistic, humanistic, flowing, and it's a departure, obviously, from all that early Egyptian and early Greek stuff. We see this twisted poses, very natural. The curves of the body are represented, and that when we look at the boxer here, we look at the human condition. Now we've gone from the focus of gods and everything important to look inside man, and man being sort of the more important. And that's sort of what you want to recognize in that Hellenistic period and style. And then last but not least, we jump up here into our Roman. And the Roman, there are a couple questions on your multiple choice question, but this is also going to be everything that we're going to talk about in your DBA. Remember the DBA you're going to do before you can take that summative. You can't get in to take the little thing until you come take your DBA and get the number. What I want you to know about Rome, and what we want to focus most on Rome, those advancements in architecture. And the paramount in that is going to be the invention of concrete. Concrete allowed them to do things with architecture that the Greeks couldn't do. These domes, arches. And arches are particularly important as they were bringing these aqueducts and the advancement of moving water from one area to another. all created by using these large aqueducts that were suspended essentially up on these large arches. The domes that we see they've constructed, Pantheon, it has those two big sort of concentric circles that are, I don't say concentric, but they make those two perfect circles that join. And so could have done that without the advance of concrete. You want to really start paying attention to where the structures are being built. Like, think about the Greeks had a way of using their environment very often. We look at these amphitheaters and how they were built into the surround of the environment. Very often their building, their cities were reflective of the environment. They made use of that. And so think about how they made use of that and why. There are those 5 different styles included in portraits. There's really, 4th style plus portraits. You want to take a look at these. You want to be able to, if I say, hey, is this 3rd or 4th or 5th style? You want to say, yeah, it's all, monochromatic, probably 3rd style. There's a few cues you can pick up on. Recognizing that it's Roman versus something else is important. But even in these styles and these periods move, there's a lot of kind of overlap. So just kind of a basic idea of sort of where it fits in there. Roman Republican sculpture, again, when we look at what happened in Hellenistic, how does that even advance more as we look at Roman art? How they achieve such amazing realism? So think about those technological advances. The Greeks, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians, everybody who was doing sculpture way back in the day, they were chiseling things out. The Greeks started figuring out mask. You could cast somebody's face. So very often these renderings became incredibly realistic because they were really working from a cast of an actual person very often. You do want to know a little bit about the imperial art under Augustus. Particularly, you want to know what this statue is. You're going to want to know about this statue. Who is that guy? Know that. What period is this from? Early imperial art. This sculpture. Early imperial. You want to be able to recognize these things. Recognize the architectural advances. Early imperial. Where is this? What is this? And why has it got all these little things like this? Understand what that is. Be able to talk about it a little bit. When we look at the, you definitely want to know this building. Know what that is. I'm going to ask you about that. Archititus. I don't know that there's a lot of question about that on the DBA, but I'm concerned less with you knowing the titles and more so with being able to recognize the artistic cues, stylistic cues, I should say, within the art that help you recognize what part of that imperial Roman art that comes from. You do want to know about the column of Trajan. You will want to recognize what this is. When is it from? Hey, that's high imperial art. That's the column of Trajan. So what is it? You got to know a little bit about it. Why is it still there? Be able to tell me something about that. You want to know what the Pantheon? You got to recognize Pantheon. If you can't recognize Pantheon, I have failed you. So. Pantheon, Parthenon, Colosseum, know those things. I don't know if we looked at the Parthenon, but definitely Pantheon and Colosseum. You want to be able to take a look at recognize the difference between early, high, and late imperial art, and which of these pieces are reflective of what. When we look at the late imperial sculpture, I want you to be able to recognize, these deep reliefs. This is one of these that come from this late imperial art. I want you to be able to recognize, the art, where it comes from, what period, and what is it there that's going to help you identify those different periods. The DBA will be quick and easy. You're going to know all of this. You're going to have your study guide in front of you, and you do want to know about the Basilica of Constantine, Arts of Constantine, and the DBA works like this. You're going to come in, you'll take the DBA. If you do well, you'll do great. If you don't do well, I'm probably going to ask you to go back and take a look at the review and try again. All right, guys, that's it for our DBA review. Please don't go anywhere because I want to talk to you specifically about how my DBA runs. And hold on one second. Thank you.